Captain Alex Grant stood at the edge of the docking bay, gazing out at the strange, distant world before him. The planet's surface was a swirl of vibrant blues and purples, its atmosphere thick with uncharted gases. His mission, as it always was simple: explore, communicate, and understand. But this mission felt different. The Lurians, the race inhabiting this world, had remained elusive despite humanity's best efforts to make peaceful contact. Alex had been chosen for this task because of his calm demeanor and ability to handle delicate situations. He was the kind of leader who thought before acting, who understood that patience could be just as powerful as any weapon. But no amount of training could prepare him for the sight he was about to witness. The Lurians were an ancient species, tall and graceful, with skin that shimmered like polished metal. Their eyes were larger than human eyes, but instead of seeming alien or unsettling, they held a quiet wisdom, a depth that made Alex wonder about their history. He had seen records of them, brief glimpses of Lurian architecture, their cityscapes, their art. But he had never seen one up close. He had never felt the weight of their culture and history like this. As his shuttle touched down on the soft soil of the Lurian colony, Alex's heart began to race. This was it. The moment that could change everything. A successful encounter could open up an entire new chapter of peaceful exploration for humanity. But failure would be catastrophic. The shuttle doors slid open with a soft hiss, and Alex stepped out onto the alien ground. His boots crunched softly on the earth as he took his first step into a world that was unlike any he had ever seen. The air smelled of something unfamiliar, like the scent of rain on metal, crisp and sharp. He wasn't alone for long. From the shadows of the grand trees, a figure emerged. Tall and slender, with skin that reflected the sunlight like smooth silver, the alien woman walked toward him. Her features were striking, angular, almost perfect in their symmetry, and her eyes glowed with an inner light that made Alex's breath catch in his throat. "Welcome, human." The woman's voice was like the sound of wind chimes, soft and melodic, but with an unmistakable strength behind it. "I am Zaria of the Lurian people." Alex blinked, momentarily stunned by her beauty. He had expected many things from the Lurians, diplomatic gestures, perhaps even some resistance, but he had not expected this. This woman, this creature, was something from a dream. But she was not a dream. She was real. "I am Captain Alex Grant," he replied, trying to regain his composure. "It is an honor to meet you, Zaria." Zaria inclined her head, her long hair cascading down like a river of silver. "The honor is mine, human," she said. There was no malice in her voice, no suspicion, just an openness that surprised him. Alex knew this moment could set the tone for their entire encounter. He had prepared for years for this day. He took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "We come in peace. Our people want to learn, to understand, and to share knowledge. We believe that together, we can build something lasting." Zaria's gaze shifted slightly as if considering his words. Then, without warning, she stepped closer to him. Her movements were fluid, graceful, like a dancer on a stage. She stopped just within arm's reach, her eyes never leaving his. "You speak of peace, but your people have been to many worlds before us. Some of those worlds, they were not left in peace," she said, her voice carrying a weight that made Alex's stomach tighten. It wasn't anger that filled her words, but something deeper. Sorrow, perhaps? Fear? Alex felt a pang of guilt. He knew the history of humanity's expansion. Not all of it was peaceful. There were mistakes made, worlds lost, and cultures forgotten. But that wasn't who humanity was now. They had learned. They were ready to change. I understand your concerns, Alex said gently. We're not here to take anything. We want to learn, to share, and to build something together. We want to be better. Zaria didn't respond immediately. Instead, she tilted her head, as if measuring his sincerity. Then, without another word, she turned and gestured for him to follow. Alex did, keeping his distance, but noting the elegance in every step she took. The landscape around them seemed to glow in the soft light of the twin suns above, and the air felt alive with the buzz of unseen creatures. It was a place of quiet beauty, of serenity, and Alex couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. They arrived at a large stone structure, an ancient-looking building surrounded by lush greenery. The walls were covered in vines that sparkled faintly in the sunlight, and the architecture was unlike anything Alex had ever seen, both alien and familiar, as if it were both ancient and timeless. As they entered, Alex was met with a warm breeze. That seemed to come from nowhere, filling the room with a sense of calm. Zaria led him to a large table where several other Lurians were seated. They were all watching him with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Alex took a seat at the table and Zaria sat beside him. The conversation was slow at first, the language barrier making it difficult to communicate, but slowly, with the help of translators, they made progress. Zaria's people were wary of humanity, but they weren't hostile. That, Alex thought, was a good sign. It meant that the door was open, if only a crack. Hours passed, and as the meeting came to an end, Zaria stood and extended her hand. Alex took it without hesitation, a gesture of goodwill. "Thank you for your courage, Captain," Zaria said, her voice soft but steady. "You have shown me that not all humans are as we feared." Alex smiled, feeling a sense of pride, though he knew this was only the beginning. "Thank you, Zaria. I believe this is the start of something great." As they walked back outside, the twin suns were beginning to set, casting a soft orange glow across the sky. For the first time since arriving, Alex felt a deep sense of hope. Maybe this world and its people could be part of humanity's future. And maybe, just maybe, the Lurians were not so different from humans after all. Captain Alex Grant stood in the command room of the Lurian colony's main building, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on him. Zaria had left for the evening, but the meeting earlier had left him with more questions than answers. As much as she had seemed open to the idea of peace, there was a depth to her that Alex could sense, something she wasn't sharing. There was fear behind her words, and Alex needed to understand why. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the equipment around him. On the walls, large displays showed maps of the planet and star systems surrounding it. It was easy to forget just how far he had come, how far humanity had come. But as he stared at the glowing blue planet on the map, a thought kept gnawing at him. Could peace really be possible? He wasn't sure anymore. "Captain Grant, the Lurian leadership requests your presence." A voice interrupted his thoughts. It was soft yet firm, and it came from one of the attendants who had been guiding him during his visit. Alex nodded and followed the attendant down the halls of the massive stone building. The walls were lined with carvings and symbols, telling stories of the Lurian people's history, both glorious and tragic. Alex had learned that the Lurians were a proud, ancient species with a deep connection to their planet and its energies. But there was also a long history of conflict. Conflict with the Dravex, a neighboring species who had long been their enemies. The meeting room was smaller than the main chamber, a simple but elegant room with large windows that looked out over the landscape. As Alex entered, he saw Zaria sitting at the table with several other Lurian leaders. Her posture was strong, yet her eyes seemed distant, as though something weighed heavily on her. "Captain," she greeted him with a soft nod, and he could tell she was still processing their earlier conversation. "Zaria," Alex replied, I trust we can continue our talks? The Lurian leaders were all quiet for a moment before one of them, an older male with pale green skin, spoke. His voice was deep, filled with authority. Captain Grant, we have listened to your words and reviewed your people's history. You speak of peace, but we must consider our own survival. The Dravex are not just our enemies. They are a threat to everything we hold dear. You may be well-intentioned, but we cannot risk our people for the hope of an uncertain peace. Alex's heart sank as the reality of the situation became clearer. He had suspected there was more to the story than just a desire for peace, but hearing it confirmed felt like a cold slap to the face. The Lurians were afraid of the Dravex, and afraid of making the wrong choice. But Alex couldn't give up. He knew that if they didn't try, all hope would be lost. You are right to be cautious, Alex said, choosing his words carefully. The Dravex are a dangerous species, and I understand your fears. But a war will only bring more destruction. I believe we can find a way to work together, to find a path forward that benefits both our people. Zaria's gaze flickered to him, and for a moment, their eyes met. She didn't say anything, but there was a soft recognition in her look. She wanted peace, too, but she was trapped by her own people's fears, just as he was. I wish I could. Promise you that everything will be easy, Alex continued, his voice steady. But what I can promise is that humanity is here to stand beside you, not against you. Together we can create something stronger than war. The room fell silent again. The other leaders exchanged uncertain glances, their expressions hard to read. But it was clear that their hearts were torn. Zaria was their leader, but even she was unsure. She had been raised with the belief that the Dravex would one day destroy them, and this belief was hard to shake, no matter how much she wanted peace. We will consider your words, the older leader finally said. But you must understand, Captain Grant, that the Lurian people will not go down without a fight. We cannot trust anyone, human or Dravex, who might put our survival in jeopardy. I understand, Alex said softly, though the weight of those words felt like a heavy stone in his chest. But you don't have to face this alone. Humanity will. Stand with you, Zaria. Whatever path you choose, I'll be by your side. Zaria looked at him, her eyes softening. I do not doubt your sincerity, Captain, she said quietly. But I am not sure if I can convince my people to trust you. Alex didn't respond right away. He knew Zaria's struggle. It wasn't just about convincing the Lurian leadership. It was about convincing a whole species that change was possible. The Dravex had been their enemies for so long that peace seemed impossible. But Alex wasn't willing to give up. He had seen what war could do to a world. He had lived through its horrors on Earth. He didn't want that for the Lurians. As they finished the meeting, Zaria walked with him to the door, her steps slow. The others had left, and it was just the two of them now, standing in the quiet hall. Thank you, human, Zaria said softly. You are brave to stand here, knowing the danger we are in. I admire that. Alex gave her a small smile. It's not just bravery, it's belief in something better. I believe that both our species can rise above our pasts and create a future that works for everyone. Zaria's eyes searched his face for a long moment, as if trying to find the truth in his words. Finally, she spoke again. I want to believe that too, but I fear the cost of that belief. I'll be here, Zaria, Alex said. You won't have to face it alone. As they walked out into the cooling evening, Alex felt a sense of determination settling within him. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with dangers and obstacles. But if he could help Zaria, if he could help the Lurians see beyond their fears, then perhaps there was hope for peace after all. But as the stars began to twinkle above, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that a storm was coming, one that would test them all. The days that followed were tense, filled with quiet conversations, meetings, and long hours spent staring out at the vastness of space. Captain Alex Grant had done everything he could to convince the Lurian leadership that peace was possible, but Zaria's people were still unsure. The weight of history, the fear of betrayal, and the shadow of the Dravex hung over every word spoken. Alex had learned that the Lurians valued their heritage and their planet above all else. For centuries they had been locked in a battle for survival with the Dravex, and the scars of those years ran deep. To many Lurians, trusting outsiders, especially humans, was an impossible thought. But Alex couldn't give up. He believed that the two species could work together, that they could overcome their pasts and build something stronger. One evening, after another failed round of discussions with the leadership, Alex walked to the garden of the Lurian palace. The air was cool, and the setting sun cast long shadows across the peaceful landscape. The garden was beautiful, filled with alien plants that seemed to glow in the fading light. The colors were unlike anything Alex had seen before, a mix of soft greens, purples, and blues. He couldn't help but feel at peace here, even though he knew that the political tension was building just outside this tranquil space. As Alex wandered deeper into the garden, he saw a familiar figure standing by the edge of a pond. Zaria. Her silver skin shimmered in the last light of the day, and her long, flowing hair seemed to move as if it had a life of its own. She stood still, gazing at the water, lost in thought. Alex hesitated for a moment, but then approached her slowly, not wanting to disturb her but feeling the need to speak. He had been thinking about the future, about what lay ahead, and he knew that this conversation could change everything. "Zaria?" Alex called softly, his voice carrying in the quiet air. Zaria turned, her face softening when she saw him. There was a look in her eyes, something between sadness and hope. She didn't say anything at first, but she motioned for him to come closer. Alex took a step forward, standing beside her. "Do you ever wonder if it's all worth it?" Zaria asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "All the fighting, the distrust, the fear. Sometimes I wonder if we'll ever be free from it." Alex looked out at the pond, the ripples on the water catching the last rays of the sun. "I think about it every day," he said quietly. "The past is heavy for both our species. But that's why we have to try. If we don't, then we're just repeating the same mistakes." Zaria nodded, but her eyes were distant. "I want to believe that, Alex. I really do. But how can I convince my people to trust you? How can I convince them that you won't just be another conqueror?" Alex took a deep breath. He had asked himself that very question many times. He knew the answer was not easy, and there was no guarantee that Zaria's people would ever fully trust him. But he had to try. "I can't convince them all at once, Zaria. But I can show them that I'm here for the right reasons. I'll prove it, if it takes everything I have." Zaria's eyes softened, and for the first time, Alex saw a flicker of something in her, a hope that had been buried deep. "You've already shown me that," she said, her voice filled with sincerity. "Your people have made mistakes, but not all humans are the same. And you, Alex, you've shown me that. You've shown me that there is still hope." Alex smiled, feeling a warmth spread through him. It wasn't much, but it was a start. They were both beginning to understand each other in ways they hadn't before. It was a small breakthrough, but it was one that could lead to something bigger. "I'm glad you see that," Alex said, "because I truly believe that if we work together we can change things. Not just for us, but for the future." Zaria looked at him, her expression unreadable for a moment. Then, without warning, she stepped closer to him, her presence overwhelming. She reached out, gently placing her hand on his arm. Her touch was light, but it sent a shock of warmth through Alex's chest. "Thank you, Alex," she whispered. "Thank you for not giving up on us." Alex didn't know what to say. He had never been in a situation like this before. He had never been faced with the complexities of another species' fears, their pain, their history. But in that moment, standing beside Zaria, he felt more connected to her than he had ever felt before. She was no longer just a leader or an alien. She was a person, someone who was struggling with the same fears, the same doubts, the same hope that he was. "You're not alone," Alex said softly, his voice steady. "We're in this together." Zaria's eyes glistened, and for a moment Alex thought she might say something more, but instead she simply nodded, her expression quiet. It wasn't the end of their journey, it was just the beginning. The conversation had opened a door between them, one that was still fragile but real. There were still many challenges ahead, and Alex knew that not everyone would be as willing to listen as Zaria was. But he also knew that they had made progress. They had begun to break down the walls of mistrust that had stood between their two species for so long. Later that night, as Alex lay in his quarters, he thought about the conversation with Zaria. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the edge of something momentous. There was still much to do, and the Dravex threat loomed over them all. But for the first time since arriving, Alex felt a sense of purpose, a sense of hope. Peace wasn't easy, and it wasn't guaranteed. But it was possible, and that was all he needed to know. The days following the quiet conversation in the garden were filled with a heavy silence. Captain Alex Grant could feel the tension in the air, not just between the Lurians and humans, but in Zaria herself. The walls of fear and mistrust that had been built over centuries were still there, lingering in the background of every conversation. It was a slow process, this journey toward peace, but Alex knew that each day mattered. However, as the days passed, things began to take an unexpected turn. It started with a subtle change in the atmosphere. Zaria was more distant, her eyes filled with a quiet sadness that Alex couldn't quite place. The once open communication between them became strained. She avoided his gaze in meetings, and their private conversations grew shorter, more formal. Alex tried to reach out, but something was different. It was as if a shadow had fallen between them, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't break through it. One evening, after another round of tense discussions with the Lurian leadership, Alex found himself alone in his quarters, staring out at the unfamiliar landscape. The stars were visible through the window, distant and cold, just like the peace he had hoped for. He felt a growing unease, a sense that something was about to happen, something he couldn't stop. A sudden knock on the door broke his thoughts. He stood quickly, his hand on the weapon at his side, though he didn't expect trouble. He opened the door to find one of the Lurian guards standing there, his face unreadable. "Captain Grant," the guard said, his voice formal. "The High Command requests your immediate presence. There has been an issue." Alex's heart skipped a beat. He followed the guard without question, his mind racing with possibilities. What could have gone wrong? Was it the Dravex? Had their negotiations broken down? The command center was busy when they arrived, with officers rushing back and forth, their faces tense. Zaria was standing near the center of the room, speaking with several other Lurian leaders. She didn't look at Alex when he entered. The coldness in the air was palpable. "What's going on, Zaria?" Alex asked, his voice calm but with an edge of concern. Zaria turned slowly, her expression unreadable. "Captain, it seems we have a problem," she said quietly, though her words held an underlying tension. Before Alex could ask anything more, a loud voice interrupted. It was the older male leader from the meeting days before, the one who had been the most vocal about distrust. He stepped forward, a smirk on his face. "Captain Grant, you are accused of espionage against the Lurian people," he said, his tone sharp and accusing. Alex froze. "What?" he asked, his voice rising in disbelief. That's ridiculous. I'm here to help. Zaria's eyes flickered to the floor. She didn't speak, but Alex saw the brief flash of guilt in her gaze. That was when he understood. The betrayal hadn't come from the other leaders. It had come from within the very heart of the Lurian leadership. Zaria had been forced into this. It's not what it seems, Alex tried to explain, his voice calm but firm. I came here to offer peace, not to harm anyone. The older leader laughed. You're in no position to speak, human. We have evidence that you've been gathering intel for the Dravex. It's all here, in your communications. Alex's mind raced. He had no idea what they were talking about. He hadn't sent any messages to the Dravex. The only person he had been in contact with was Zaria. And even then, it had been about finding a way to stop the war, not to start one. This is a mistake, Alex said, his voice low but full of urgency. You have to believe me. But Zaria didn't speak. She simply stood there, her face pale. Her silence was the worst of all. Zaria, please, Alex begged, his voice shaking slightly. Tell them it's not true. You know me. You know I've never betrayed you. Zaria's eyes met his, and for a brief moment, Alex saw the pain in them. She wanted to speak, wanted to help him, but the pressure from her people was too much. She had to make a choice, and in that moment, she had chosen the safety of her people over the truth. I'm sorry, Alex, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I don't have a choice. Alex's heart sank. Betrayal. It wasn't just political. It was personal. Zaria, the woman he had trusted, the woman who had promised that they would face the future together, had turned away from him. And it wasn't because she didn't care. It was because her people were afraid, and in their fear they had driven her to this. The older leader stepped forward. Take him away, he commanded, his voice cold. The guards moved quickly, seizing Alex's arms. No! Alex shouted, struggling against their grip. You have to listen! This is a mistake! But the more he fought, the tighter their hold became. He was dragged from the room, his heart heavy with disbelief and sorrow. Zaria's face was the last thing he saw before they shoved him into a small cell. She didn't look at him. She didn't try to stop them. Alex sat on the cold floor of the cell, his mind racing. How could she do this, he thought. How could she betray me like this? But deep down, Alex knew the answer. Zaria wasn't the one who had betrayed him. It was the fear. The fear of war, of loss, of destruction that had twisted everything. And now, it was too late to take it back. For hours, Alex sat in the cell, wondering what would happen next. Would the Dravex take advantage of this situation? Would the Lurians declare war on humanity? He didn't know. All he could do was wait and hope that somehow the truth would come to light. But as the hours stretched on, Alex knew that the road ahead was even more dangerous than he had ever imagined. The peace he had worked for. No, the peace they had both worked for was slipping through his fingers, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The cold stone walls of the Lurian prison cell felt like they were closing in on Captain Alex Grant. His mind raced with thoughts of betrayal, but he refused to let despair take over. He knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. Zaria hadn't truly turned against him. She had been forced into a corner by her people's fear and their desperate need for security. Alex had to find a way to make them see the truth, to make them understand that humanity wasn't their enemy. Hours passed before the door to his cell finally opened. The guards stood at the threshold, watching him with a mixture of suspicion and caution. Alex stood up, wiping the sweat from his brow, his thoughts still sharp despite the long hours of uncertainty. A figure stepped into the room, and Alex's heart skipped a beat. It was Zaria. Her usual calm demeanor was replaced with an expression of deep concern, and for a moment she hesitated before crossing the threshold. The door closed behind her with a soft click. "You're here to finish it, aren't you?" Alex said, his voice hoarse from the strain of his captivity. "You've made your choice. Your people have chosen fear over truth." Zaria's eyes filled with sadness. "I never wanted this, Alex. You have to understand, I was forced into this situation. My people, they want to survive. They fear the Dravex, and they fear that you will betray us, just as others have in the past." Alex took a step forward, his hands still bound but his determination unshaken. "I'm not the enemy, Zaria. I came here to help you, to help all of us. Don't you see? The Dravex have been manipulating you. They want to see us tear each other apart. They want us weak, divided. That's the only way they'll win." Zaria clenched her fists at her sides. "I know that. But convincing my people is impossible now. They've already made up their minds. The council is too afraid. They won't listen to anything I say." Alex's heart sank. The weight of her words felt like a crushing blow. But he couldn't give up. Not yet. There had to be a way to turn this around, to prove to Zaria's people that humanity was not a threat, but a potential ally in the fight against the true enemy. "I don't care what they believe," Alex said, his voice fierce. "I will show them the truth. I will find a way." Zaria met his gaze, her eyes filled with both fear and hope. "You're going to risk everything, aren't you?" Alex nodded. "I'm not the only one at risk. If we don't stop the Dravex, we'll both lose everything. Our worlds, our people, our future. It'll all be destroyed. But if you and I can work together, we might just be able to save both our worlds." Zaria's breath caught as she looked down, thinking for a long moment. Then, with a soft sigh, she looked back at Alex. "I can't promise you that my people will listen, but I will help you. We need to expose the truth. We need to show them that we can fight this together." Alex smiled, a small, relieved smile that was full of gratitude. "Then we do it together. No matter what happens, I know we can make a difference." The two of them sat down at the small table in the corner of the cell. Zaria leaned forward, her hands trembling slightly as she spoke. "I will speak to the council, but they won't believe me unless we can prove it. We need evidence. Something concrete to show that the Dravex are manipulating us, that they've been orchestrating this entire conflict from the shadows." "I have an idea," Alex said, a spark of hope in his eyes. "If we can break into the Dravex communications hub, we can access their messages, their plans. We'll have the proof we need. But we need to move quickly. If they catch wind of what we're doing, we won't stand a chance." Zaria nodded, her expression focused. "I'll help you. I know the layout of the Dravex base. I can get you inside, but it won't be easy. The security is tight, and we'll have to be careful. If we're caught, we'll both be dead." Alex stood up, his resolve hardening. "I'm not afraid of dying, Zaria, but I will fight for a chance at peace, and I will fight for you." Zaria's eyes softened as she looked at him. "You don't understand. It's not just about peace. It's about saving my people, my world. You're not just fighting for the Lurians. You're fighting for both of us." The weight of her words hung in the air between them. They were no longer just two individuals on a foreign planet. They were allies, bound by a common cause. The fight ahead would be dangerous, perhaps even impossible. But together, they had a chance. That was all Alex needed to hear. "Let's do this then," Alex said, determination filling his voice. "We're not going to let fear win. We're going to take down the Dravex, expose their lies, and show the Lurians that peace is possible." Zaria stood as well, her posture strong. "We'll need to move quickly. I'll speak to the council tomorrow. I'll tell them that I have evidence. that I can prove the Dravex have been manipulating us all along. But I'll need you to be ready. The moment they give us a chance, we'll have to strike." Alex nodded. "I'll be ready. And together, we'll make sure they don't have the chance to destroy everything we've worked for." The door to the cell opened again, and the guards stepped inside. Zaria quickly turned away from Alex, her face unreadable as she adjusted her posture to appear more formal. She looked back at him for just a moment before nodding. "We'll do this, Alex," she whispered. Alex gave her a determined nod. They were on the same side now, and together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. The truth was their weapon, and with it, they had the power to change everything. The tension in the air was thick as Captain Alex Grant and Zaria stood side by side, watching the Lurian High Command gather for what could be the most important meeting of their lives. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the stone floor of the chamber. The room was silent except for the soft hum of distant machinery. For Alex, every second felt like an eternity. Zaria had spoken to the council, telling them that she had evidence of Dravex manipulation, and though they were skeptical, a few of the leaders had agreed to hear her out. She had prepared everything, every detail carefully planned. The weight of the moment pressed on both of them. One wrong move, one moment of hesitation, and everything they had worked for would collapse. Zaria's eyes flickered to Alex. There was a quiet strength in her gaze, a determination that mirrored his own. She had always been strong, but now, more than ever, she carried the hopes of her people on her shoulders. Alex had no illusions about the challenge ahead, but he believed in her. He believed in them. "I'm ready," Zaria whispered, her voice steady. Alex nodded. "We're in this together." The door to the council room opened, and the Lurian leaders began to file in, their expressions serious and guarded. There were more than a dozen of them, each a key figure in the decision-making process of the Lurian people. Alex knew that winning them over would be difficult, but he also knew that they had no other choice. Zaria stepped forward and addressed the council with authority, her voice ringing clear. "I bring you the truth. The Dravex have been manipulating us for years, playing on our fears and causing division. I have proof, evidence that will show you that humanity is not our enemy, but an ally in the fight for survival." The room fell into an uneasy silence as the leaders exchanged uncertain glances. There was still hesitation in their eyes, but Alex could see a spark of curiosity. Zaria's words had begun to open the door, and now it was up to them to walk through it. "Show us this proof, Zaria," one of the leaders said, his voice skeptical but not dismissive. Zaria nodded and stepped aside, motioning for Alex to approach. He walked to the center of the room, where a large screen flickered to life. The image on the screen was grainy at first, but it soon cleared, revealing a transmission from the Dravex, a message intercepted by Alex and his team. The voice on the screen was harsh, alien, and unmistakable. It was a high-ranking Dravex officer speaking to a group of commanders, discussing their plan to undermine the Lurians and provoke a war. "They will not see our true intentions until it is too late," the Dravex leader said in a chilling tone. "Once we divide them, the Lurians will be weak. We will destroy them, and humanity will be no threat. Let them fight each other, and we will pick up the pieces." The room gasped as the words echoed through the chamber. Alex could see the shock in the faces of the Lurian leaders. The evidence was undeniable. "This is what they've been doing," Zaria said, her voice firm. "They've been manipulating both of our peoples, using fear and distrust to keep us divided. They want us to fight. They want us to be weak." For a moment, the room was silent, the weight of the truth sinking in. Then one of the leaders, a young woman with dark skin and sharp eyes, stood up. "Zaria speaks the truth," she said, her voice strong. "I have seen the signs myself. The Dravex have been sending false reports, claiming that the human explorers are